we talked a little bit about community service and the things that he's done prior. Now the real reason why I asked him to come in here is, Jerry, you somewhere in your life decided, I want to get more information about the lumbering era of Michigan and the surrounding area.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is brought to you by WGLM 106.3 FM, Be More Media, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, and DW Video. Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast. My name's Dwayne. I'm your host and producer. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can go to discovermontcalmpodcast.com and check out all the episodes. In this episode, I'm talking with Jerry Poprawski. Jerry, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you, Dwayne.
You've done a lot for the area, but you're not originally from the area. Where did you grow up, and what was life like? You know, where did you go to school?
Okay.
That type of thing.
Actually grew up in Lake County in a small village of Luther, which started as a lumbering town,
Okay.
which most small towns in Michigan did. Went to Luther Agricultural School, and I tell everyone I graduated in the top 20 of my class, but there were only 13.
Your sense of humor is like mine. It's funnier in your head, and it's really cool. So, in what year did you come into the Howard City area?
Came here in 1971, took a teaching job with Tri-County area schools.
And when you were at Tri-County, what were you teaching?
I started out teaching physical education because I wanted to become involved in coaching.
Okay.
Then I taught 5th grade for a year, and then I transferred to the middle school and taught 6th grade for the rest of my career.
And then you retired from?
And then I retired from Tri-County
Okay.
after 31 years, and then went back to work for 17 more with Montcalm Community College.
Okay. So education has been kind of the basis of your career.
Yes, it has been.
Your life. I know that you've been very, very involved in local government. At what point in your life did you go from, okay, I'm teaching, I've got all the time, I got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to fill up my schedule with more things. When did you become into that, a community servant?
I would say probably about in 1973, I got involved with the village of Howard City on the village council. I was on a couple of committees. About that time, we also started like a community group, and Dr. Miller at that time was at Montcalm Community College,
Okay.
and he kind of got us involved in doing some different things, community service things, trying to bring Montcalm Community College over into Howard City
Okay.
with a little satellite building.
Okay. So, 1973, you get the, I don't know if it's the bug or the urge to serve. Since that time, you were involved with the Howard City Village for quite a few years.
Yes, I was involved with the village for about 25 years, served under the then President Mike Scott, who became president about that time. I was the president pro tem for a number of years.
Okay.
Helped with the master plan, the first master plan they did, and just recently we completed a new master plan for the village and the county, or not the county, but the township of Reynolds.
Well, let's talk on that for just a minute. Your first master plan. Somebody had a vision.
Right.
That needed to be more than just what they were doing.
Right.
So walk us through what you remember of that first master plan.
The first master plan, we had a person out of Grand Rapids that helped us. I think it was Dave B., who
Okay.
did that kind of work, came into the village and kind of led us into a direction that we thought we wanted to go at that time, which was try to do some growth
Mhm.
in the village, bring some jobs to the village. We needed housing at that time in the village, so that was the focus at that time.
Okay. Is that when the local sewer water, was that part of that?
Actually, the water and sewer started here in 1968.
Oh, so that was,
That was before the master plan. Yeah.
okay, okay,
In fact, it was here before I came in 1971.
okay. I think that's an important part of why we are growing. And
Yes, it
why
is.
there is some growth, where
Yes.
some of the other communities that have not set up water, sewer,
Right.
that kind of stuff, because it's allowed us to have, the Renaissance zone.
Yes.
It's allowed us to have some other things. So the master plan at that time, you were looking for just growth.
Right.
Okay. Recently in 2024, you're working on an updating.
Right. Well, a master plan has to be updated legally every 5 years.
Okay.
Sometimes it doesn't happen. You can just review it and say you're happy with the master plan, your first master plan.
Okay.
But this year we did a complete update, and a firm out of Grand Rapids came and helped us with that.
Okay. Is it something that is public knowledge now that you can share some of what this new master plan is, or do we have to kind of wait?
No, the master plan, if anybody wants a copy of the master plan, they have one at the village, and
Okay.
you can also look at one at the township. And that master plan, well, it involved a lot of community members when you work on a master plan.
Mhm.
It's not just people that are local people in office.
Okay.
Anybody could be on the master plan or involved in the master plan.
So with this update, what are some things that have been the focus? Is it still trying to get jobs?
It's still trying to get jobs. The master plan, there were actually flyers sent out
Okay.
to various community members. They could get input, and I think for the village and the township, I think they got back over 125 surveys back, and there were various questions asked what people in the community wanted to see,
Sure.
and for the village and the township. And a lot of those dealt with jobs and housing. That
Okay.
seemed to be the main focus. And for the village, they wanted some things for the youth to do.
Oh, well, I think today a lot of every community's trying to find something for the youth.
Yes,
I know we have parks, we have,
Right.
and trying to utilize those to the best of your
Right.
ability and probably budget.
well,
Yeah.
budget's a big part.
It all comes down to money. So you're serving, you're still serving, and I know before we went on air here, you were saying that you spend your time in committee meetings.
Well, I'm on the planning commission, or the planning committee, which we have 7 members. And if somebody wants to do something in the township, they come to the planning commission with their ideas, and we hear their ideas, and we can recommend that plan to the township board. They actually are the ones that will say, yes, we can implement that, or no.
Okay.
We just make a recommendation to them.
Well, I like these interviews because they start off with a welcome, and then I never know what path we're going to go down, because I actually asked you to come in here to talk about lumbering in Michigan and the surrounding area, and we're going to do that. We're going to do it right after this message from our sponsors.
We would like to thank our sponsor, M1063, WGLM, FM, your locally owned and operated radio station, playing the widest variety of music to keep you moving with local news, sports, and weather. Visit m1063.com. Be More Media helps businesses be seen, be heard, and be more profitable. Be More Media helps small businesses get seen on Google and found through digital marketing and print marketing strategies. Visit them at bemoremedia.com. West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your local source for managed IT, websites design and hosting, digital marketing, and more. Check them out at wmtds.com.
I'd like to welcome you back to the Discover Montcalm podcast. I'm here with Jerry Poprawski. We talked a little bit about community service and the things that he's done prior. Now, the real reason why I asked him to come in here is, Jerry, you somewhere in your life decided, I want to get more information about the lumbering era of Michigan and the surrounding area. And when did that happen? And, I know we're going to talk about what a Shanty Boy is and who's the bull of the woods. So let's start with that. Let's start with, how did you start getting into the history of lumbering in the area?
Actually, it started in probably my freshman year in high school. I was always enjoyed history, but I grew up in a lumbering community, which a lot of small towns in Michigan, well, even larger towns start out as lumbering towns.
Right.
That's what grew Michigan to begin with, was lumbering. And one day in the Pine River, I found a log end.
Okay.
And it had a lumber mark on that log end.
Okay.
And my quest was to find the instrument that made that mark on the end of that log, and you
said
was
that
a
was
marking hammer.
when you were in
Probably
high
in
school?
ninth grade.
Okay. And the Pine River is up in...
It's up in
Lake
County, yes.
Okay. One thing about Discovering Montcalm, we don't have borders. And what is nice about our county is things that happen in Mecosta and Osceola and Lake and all of those, at that time, were probably very similar. And rivers were used to transport the logs down to some place where they would either get them out to Lake Michigan to put on a ship, or even a train. I mean, the trains were a big transportation at that point.
Yes.
So you found this log end.
Yes.
You found the tool.
Well,
What's
it took me
next?
5 years to find the tool. They're hard to locate.
Okay. So once you found it, you're like your own little investigator. That opened up a whole new direction for you. Can you talk about how what you did next?
Well, it actually started with our 6th grade class here in Tri-County. Our entire 6th grade class, we had 5 teachers. We took our students for a week to an outdoor education camp in Wolverine, Michigan.
Okay.
It was outdoor education, and in the evening we had speakers come in. And one of those speakers was Wendell Hoover, who was the park interpreter of Pine State Park.
Outside of Kalkaska.
Actually, it's outside of Grayling.
Oh, Grayling.
Yes, Grayling. It's actually a little north and east of Grayling.
Okay. It's up, for us, it's up north.
It's up north, yes.
From our location.
It's quite a ways up north. You can imagine being on a school bus with 40 or 50 students heading up to Wolverine, which is about a 2.5-hour drive from Howard City.
So it started with the 6th grade class.
Yes.
And then you kind of took it farther.
From there, I have a huge lumbering collection. I collected all of the tools from the 1880s that the then Shanty Boy would have used, who later became a lumberjack in Michigan. They were called Shanty Boys in the early days because they lived in a shanty.
Okay.
It started in Maine and then progressed as they timbered most of the east off. And of course, then they were moving into Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
So that was what part of the 1800s?
I would say probably right after the Civil War.
Okay.
Logging, well, they needed lumber because they were expanding into the Midwest, and of course they needed lumber to build. So it started probably right around 1864, 1865 in Michigan.
Okay. So the Shanty Boys were known, that was just their title instead of it being a lumber.
Right.
It was just a term that,
Right.
because of the living in a shanty.
If you would have mentioned a shanty boy in the early 1870s, the man who worked in the camp wouldn't have known who you were talking about.
Okay.
Later, they became lumberjacks.
Okay. And that kind of makes
Yes.
sense. So part of that, the Bull of the Woods. Who's the Bull of the Woods?
The Bull of the Woods was the camp foreman. He was in charge of the whole operation, and everything depended upon the Bull of the Woods. He was the boss of the camp, and he let you know he was the boss of the camp.
Well, I'm sure you're dealing with some pretty rugged individuals.
Yes, you were.
We're trying to pull our words here, but so at that time, what were some of the jobs that would be happening at a lumber camp?
Well, the main job was the landlooker who went into an area, and his job was to cover that area and look at what kind of timber was there. They were mainly interested in white pine at that time.
Okay.
So the landlooker would go in, he would locate the timber, and then a timber company would buy that parcel of property. It could be here in Reynolds Township, could have been anywhere from, I'd say, with southern Grand Rapids all the way to the tip of Michigan at that time.
Okay.
And it was mainly white pine they harvested first.
Okay. So there were crews all over Michigan.
Well, yes, there were. Once the landlooker got done, and then they would have to put together their crew, and usually the first one going in would set up the camp, the lumber camp. It could be anywhere from 40 men to 100 and some men in these shanties that they called at that time.
Okay. So we talked a little bit when I opened up that once they pull all these, cut all these trees, they got to go somewhere. So they had, the transportation methods at the time were what?
First transportation, they needed some way to get these to the sawmill, and it was rivers or streams.
Okay.
Here in Montcalm County, in the southern part of the county, Montcalm County, most of that timber went down the flat into Grand Rapids, and then they had sawmills in Grand Rapids. From there, they went down to Grand Haven.
Okay.
The northern part, Reynolds Township north, they went down the Tamarack to the Little Muskegon to the Muskegon, and then either into Newaygo. From Newaygo, they sometimes went into Muskegon. That's where the big mills were.
Okay, so being on the Muskegon River, this was before Croton and Hardy Dam were in existence. I mean, way before.
Yes.
And so you've got the person that looks at the land, you've got the person that comes in and clears the land, and then, because it wasn't just building Michigan, the wood that was, milled here went all over.
A lot of the timber from Michigan was sent to Chicago after the Chicago fire
Okay.
in 1881.
Okay.
And then from there, a lot of that timber went to the Midwest.
Okay.
So I would say Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota built the Midwest.
Okay.
With Michigan and with Midwest timber.
So that was the point where, we had the growth. Now, fast forward, during your research, what's some of the interesting points in time did lumbering change?
Well, lumbering changed the first timber they harvested had to be near a body of water.
Right.
There was no other transportation other than water. So finally, they came up with an idea of putting down narrow gauge railroads.
Okay.
And in Cadillac, a guy by the name of William Scott came up with an idea. He had been out east and saw a train. And it was called the Shea locomotive. It was William Shea who built a Shea locomotive in Cadillac, Michigan. That started another mode of transportation. Now they could log year-round, not just in the wintertime when they had snow and ice and water. Now they could harvest timber in the interior of Michigan. So that was the first big change.
So that's a big revolution.
That was a big revolution. And the other revolution was a tool they come up with. All of the first white pine, you can imagine, you were set out in the woods, a tree anywhere from 3 to 5 foot in diameter. Now you cut that tree down with a single or double-bitted axe. So the next revolution was the cross-cut saw.
Okay.
Which came up, the good ones came about in 1880.
Okay. So, as they start to do things, they're thinking, we got to have a better tool.
It was a better tool. It sped up that process. At one time, they thought there was enough timber in Michigan that would last forever. They could start on the southern border of Grand Rapids, timber all the way to the Upper Peninsula, go across the Upper Peninsula, and 300 years later, they would start and do it all over again.
Okay. So there was a chance that, they had to be looking at, okay, we cut it down, we need to replant it. There needs to be some sort of regeneration. This wasn't going to happen naturally.
Yes.
In the rate that they. So in your history, in the part that you like to, look at the lumbering era, what years do you kind of fall into?
Most of my research was from like 1864 to about 1910.
Okay.
Because that lumber they thought was going to last for 300 years. In 40 to 60 years, most of the white pine was taken out of the state of Michigan.
Okay.
So they realized that white pine was not going to last forever, and it didn't.
And now, back in that time, they're cutting it down. They're leaving a lot of stumps. That opens up a whole new industry.
Well, they left a lot of stumps, and if you go to Truphant, which is the stump capital of Michigan, at one time they claimed they were, there is a stump puller there.
Yep.
So to turn into a farming industry, you have to get those stumps out of the ground.
And they can be downright
ornery.
That's a great word. I was trying to find that word. So now you've got all this land that you've cut, and you can't do anything because the stumps.
Right.
So 1910, they're finding that they don't have an unlimited use. I'm sure now they're just waiting for it to regenerate.
Well, the regeneration, a lot of it helped with the CCCs in about 1932.
Okay.
Which was under Roosevelt. Put young men back to work, planting red pine. They built forest roads. They constructed parks.
Yeah.
So right now we're harvesting a lot of that red pine that was planted in 1932, between 1932 and 1942.
Okay. You said CCC.
Yes, Civilian Conservation Corps.
Okay. So I'm going to say, for those that don't know what that is.
That's what it is.
The history is something that you fell into, and that you spent quite a few years of your life dressed in garb as a Shanty Boy, as the boss.
Yes.
And now, I guess you're not doing it as much?
No.
But now we're talking about it. Where can people go to find out more information about the lumbering era?
Here in Montcalm County, I would check the Flat River Historical Society.
I'll do a quick edit
All right,
here.
yep.
Let me ask that question again.
Let me get some water.
We're good.
I am getting dry.
We're good with that. And we're almost done, too.
All right.
I'll start with where.
Plus, I did a lot of talking last night, more than I wanted to. I didn't hardly have a voice left when I got home.
Where can somebody go in the county to try to find out more information about lumbering if people want to dive in and get more research?
The best place here, I would say, would be in Greenville, Flat River Historical Society.
Okay.
They have quite a section on lumbering and logging in Montcalm County.
Okay. As I wrap this up, I usually wrap it up with two questions. One, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about on the lumbering or your service in government?
One of the things I would like to talk about is a program we started here in Tri-County to help students better their education through Montcalm Community College. And that was the dual enrollment program.
Okay.
Where juniors, well actually sophomores, juniors, and seniors can take college classes through Montcalm Community College. And when they're done with those classes, when they start college, they start out as they could start out as a sophomore in college.
With a little planning. So talk to your counselors. If there's students out there or families that are like, "Ooh, I didn't know about that." Definitely get with your counselor at your high school.
Yes.
And see about setting that up. Call MCC. That's the Montcalm Community College,
Yes.
not the other one along the lake
Right.
shore. So my last question to you. You've been here since 1971. What is it about Montcalm County that you think people should discover?
Well, I think they should discover the small businesses we have here. We have Music in the Park in Howard City.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 festivals in Howard City. We just had one downtown. We had a car show. We had a craft show. The library had a book sale. And we had food vendors.
Okay.
That would be something that it does bring a lot of people into Howard City.
And just like the county, every community has something similar.
Yes, they do.
So if you're in Carson, check Carson City area. You've got these Facebook groups popping up all over the place, all over the county, whether you're in Carson City, Stanton, Edmore, Crystal, Howard City. Because there's a lot to do, and each community, you mentioned Trufant, Stump
Yes.
Stump Fest. Everybody's known for something. Edmore potatoes. And they do a festival around that to try to open up to bring people into town. One thing I've discovered by doing this is, back in probably the 30s, 40s, 50s, the town was where people went on Friday, Saturdays.
Yes, it was.
And families would come in, and it was more community. Now, with transportation the way it is, we can go wherever we want, quick. I remember talking to Margaret Krebs when I interviewed her, saying that, you didn't really go a lot of places because you really had to plan it. It was a drive from Trufant to Greenville.
Right.
Or even from Trufant to Howard City, you could take the train. It was something you had to plan for. But all the communities here have their own little uniquenesses, and take time to go discover them, because you could spend a lot of time discovering all the little nuances that are here. So Jerry, thank you for taking time to come in and talk about master plans of Howard City, history of logging, not only, probably in Michigan, And for those that want more information, the Flat River Historical Society in Greenville would be a great place to start. Check your local library. And on that, thank you for taking the time. Remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is produced by content creator Dwayne Weed, celebrating 40 years at DW Video and Multimedia LLC at dwvideo.com or call 231-250-9624. Connect and follow the Discover Montcalm podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Check out all our episodes at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. We look forward to featuring your business, community, nonprofit, events, and more. Contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624, 231-250-9624. Thank you for tuning in and following the Discover Montcalm podcast.